Moving along, I'm going to talk about closing on objections. Now, the basic rule of objections is that there are no sales without objections. That objections indicate interest, that objections are signposts that lead you on the way to closing the sale, that if you don't get objections, you're not going to get sales. There's two ways to respond to objections. The very best way is this, is take every objection and interpret it as a question. In other words, it's not a reason for not buying, it is a question requesting more information. If a person says, I can't afford it, turn it around and make it a question that says, please show me how I can afford this, or please show me that it is worth what you're asking for it so that I cannot afford not to take it. If a person says, I have to talk it over with someone else, what the person is saying is, please give me enough reasons so that I can go ahead and buy it without having to check and get somebody else's opinion. Whatever the objection is, throw out any objection that you can think of that you get with your product or service. An objection is not to be feared, an objection is to be welcomed, because as I say, objections are the stepping stones to sales success, or the rungs on the ladder to sales success. In your business, and in my business, and in every business, we have what is called the Law of Six. And the Law of Six simply says that there are basically 6 objections to buying your product or service. Now, I don't know what your 6 are. I know what my 6 are. And I know what the 6 have been in any other product or service that I've sold. But every one of us has maybe hundreds of reasons or objections, but we only have basically 6. And it is very important that we sit down and identify what are the 6 objections. It may be less. For some, it's only 1. For some, it's 2. You know, for instance, diamonds. The only reason people don't buy diamonds is because they're too expensive. It's not because they're not beautiful. It's not because they're not valuable. They don't buy them because they're too expensive. So it may only be 1 reason. But basically, there's never more than 6. And in order for us to sell effectively, we have to sit down and we have to think through what are our 6 objections. What are the 6 major objections to buying your product or service? And what is a logical answer to each of them? So that when the objection or a variation on the objection comes up, you deal with the objection and you are prepared. You don't wait till you get into a sales situation and try to make up some answer, which is what most people do, and throw it back out. Keys to handling objections. Determine whether or not it is a condition. Does everybody know what a condition is? A condition is a reason why the person cannot go ahead. You cannot sell running shoes to a person who just lost their legs in an accident. That's a very strong condition. You cannot sell business equipment to a person who has just gone bankrupt. You cannot sell clothing to a person who's just gone into receivership and has no money. In other words, a condition is a specific reason why the person absolutely cannot go ahead. Many people, when they voice an objection, think it's a condition. Your job is to find out whether or not it is a condition. The person says, I can't afford it. What does that mean? Does that mean that they don't have enough to buy it for cash this minute? Or that they don't have enough to make a minimum down payment? What does it mean? And when you say, well, how do you mean that exactly? When you say you can't afford it. What if we space the payments over 24 months? What if you could get it with 10% down? In other words, is it a real condition? Does the person have 0 money and 0 income? For instance, if a person is unemployed, there's no point in trying to sell them something that's going to be financed over 12 or 24 months because they can't get approval for the credit. Number 2 is hear the objection out. Hear it out completely. That's very, very important. And listen to it patiently. Don't interrupt even though you've heard it 1,000 times. Listen to it, as we said, pause before replying and then answer it carefully and reflectively. Number 3 is ask for elaboration. Rather than leaping in and assuming that you know what the objection is, say, how do you mean that exactly? Or even better, say, well, as I understand it, and then repeat the objection back to him in the form of a question. As I understand it, what you're asking is this. And then go ahead and state it as a question, and the person says, yes, that's what I'm asking, and then answer the question. Easier to answer a question than an objection. Another thing with regard to objections is compliment the person on the objection. I found all my life when a person says, well, geez, I can't take it for this reason or that, you say, Mr. Prospect, that's a very good question. And I'm glad you brought that up. Or that's a very important question. And we have to deal with that in a straightforward fashion. People like to be complimented on their objections. And if you treat their objections as important and as valid, just like when we have a concern, when we're upset about something, we don't want somebody to dismiss it and give us a glib answer. When we're upset about something, when we're concerned about something, and we express this to someone else, we want them to think about it and be concerned, if you like, and carefully consider what our situation is.